March 23, 2021. The courtroom fell into a heavy, suffocating silence as Judge Michelle Cisco spoke words that would linger in the minds of everyone present. After nearly 2 decades on the bench, after witnessing acts of human cruelty that defy imagination, she declared a case unlike any she had ever faced. "This is the worst case I have ever seen." The man standing in front of her had just been sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 90 years. But what the judge revealed next hinted at the unimaginable reality awaiting him. Shootings, stabbings, drownings, strangulations, and collisions that tore people apart. She had seen it all. Every form of violence had passed before her eyes, and yet nothing compared to what this case represented. Ronnie Oneal III now understood his fate. 3 life sentences served one after the other, with no hope of freedom ever. But what most fail to grasp is that the sentence itself is only the beginning. Behind the fortified walls of Blackwater River Correctional Facility, mercy has no place. The routine, the isolation, the unending monotony, and the mental strain combine into a punishment that some argue is far harsher than death itself. By the end of this video, you will see exactly why his existence there challenges every notion of justice and humanity. The crimes that led Ronnie Oneal III to prison were not ordinary acts of violence. They were deliberate, terrifying, and calculated in ways that shocked even experienced law enforcement. On that fateful night in 2018, Oneal did not merely end lives. He annihilated the sense of safety, trust, and innocence of an entire family. His girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron, and their young daughter, Ron Nivea, were subjected to a level of brutality that remains almost impossible to comprehend. The images, the sounds, the sheer terror of that night haunt every investigator, every first responder, every prosecutor who encountered the case. But the horror did not stop at the physical acts. It extended to the words he used, the coldness of his commands, the deliberate cruelty. Witnesses reported that he shouted, "Come in here, kill this bitch," before swinging a hatchet at his own child, someone who trusted him implicitly, someone who called him daddy. A 9-year-old girl, defenseless against the very person who should have been her protector. After killing Ron Nivea, he turned his rage on his son, Ronnie Oneal, stabbing him repeatedly and leaving him near death. And as if the murders alone were not enough, he set fire to their home, attempting to erase the evidence and end the life of his surviving son in the flames. The child survived, but only just. His body healed, but his mind and soul were left scarred forever by the night his father tried to kill him. This was not a crime of passion. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. It was intentional, methodical, and unthinkably cruel. Every detail of the crime was laid bare in court. The jury, confronted with the sheer magnitude of his actions, convicted him on all counts, yet they refrained from recommending the death penalty. Instead, they opted for consecutive life sentences, a decision that many considered sufficient to satisfy justice. Yet, they could not fathom what awaited Oneal behind the walls of Blackwater River Correctional Facility. Blackwater River Correctional Facility, located in Milton, Florida, is more than a prison. It is a fortress designed to contain the state's most dangerous offenders. 2,000 inmates reside within its walls. Yet for men like Oneal, home is a cruel misnomer. Maximum security here is not merely about locked doors or barbed wire. It is about control, about stripping every trace of autonomy from those who live within. Every movement is monitored. Every conversation is intercepted. Every choice from when to eat, sleep, or shower is dictated by the institution. For Oneal, this means waking each day in the same concrete cell, confronted by the same unyielding walls, the same metal fixtures, the same fluorescent lighting that mimics daylight but never truly warms the body or soul. Forever is the only concept that matters here. Not decades, not years, but forever until life itself ends. The psychological toll of such an existence is almost unimaginable. Imagine, for a moment, the life you know. Weekends, vacations, shared meals, conversations with friends, the simple joy of stepping outside into fresh air. Now, imagine that all of it has been erased. Every day repeats itself, identical in its monotony. For Oneal, the repetition is coupled with the knowledge of how deeply despised he is. Among the prison population, individuals who harm children occupy the lowest echelon of respect. They are hunted, attacked, and despised, considered subhuman even by men who have committed unspeakable acts themselves. Each step he takes in the hallways could be a step into danger. Every interaction is a potential threat, a chance for violence to erupt at any moment. This constant state of hypervigilance is not just exhausting, it is a slow psychological disintegration. The human mind, deprived of the ability to relax, begins to deteriorate. Anxiety, fear, and the threat of harm become relentless companions, protective measures, intended to shield Oneal from the wrath of other inmates, exact a cost of their own. Restricted movement, solitary interactions, and almost total isolation are designed to prevent physical harm, but they bring another kind of torment. Deprived of human connection, deprived of normal sensory stimulation, the mind begins to fray. Hallucinations become common. Time is distorted. Sleep is fractured. Simple routines can spiral into obsessive behaviors. Some prisoners pace for hours, counting steps, repeating phrases aloud, desperate for any confirmation of their existence. Others engage in self-harm to feel anything at all. Complete psychological breakdowns are not uncommon, where the distinction between reality and hallucination fades entirely. For Oneal, these are not possibilities, they are part of the sentence itself. Unlike death row, where the condemned know the exact moment their life will end, Oneal faces an open-ended sentence that stretches potentially 40 or 50 years into the future. 40 years of the same concrete, the same fluorescent lights, the same forced routine, the same relentless psychological pressure. Unlike an execution, there is no relief, no escape, no finality. He must live with the knowledge of what he did, with the horror of that night, with the screams and suffering of his own children embedded permanently in memory. Letters arrive regularly, hundreds of them, filled with anger, vitriol, and disgust, a reminder that the world has not forgotten. Even inside Blackwater, he cannot escape the weight of his own infamy. For Ronnie Oneal III, each day at Blackwater River Correctional Facility is a study in unrelenting psychological pressure. He is never truly alone, yet never truly safe. The protective custody that shields him from other inmates simultaneously isolates him from any semblance of normal human contact. Meals are delivered under supervision. Recreation is limited and monitored. Conversation is restricted, sometimes silent for days on end. The walls of his cell, the ceiling above, the cold metal fixtures, they are constants in a life stripped of variability, stripped of spontaneity, stripped of choice. This is not merely imprisonment. It is the slow erosion of self, the methodical dismantling of identity piece by piece, until the person who entered the facility no longer exists in any recognizable form. Prison psychologists have documented the effects of such prolonged isolation extensively. Hallucinations are common. Time becomes a fluid, almost meaningless concept. Minutes stretch into hours, hours into days, days into years, all indistinguishable from one another. Panic attacks and obsessive behaviors emerge almost inevitably. Some prisoners engage in repetitive motion for hours to maintain a sense of control over a reality that offers none. Others strike themselves against walls or objects in desperate attempts to feel the presence of a physical world that has been rendered meaningless by confinement. For Oneal, these are not theoretical risks. They are an ongoing reality, a part of the punishment itself, as relentless as the walls that surround him. The isolation amplifies the weight of memory. Unlike a death row inmate, who can find some solace in the knowledge that suffering will eventually end, Oneal faces decades of forced remembrance. He wakes each day remembering the screams of his daughter, the life he extinguished, the life he attempted to extinguish in his son. He sleeps with the knowledge that his crimes are permanently etched into the collective memory of the public. Letters from across the country arrive almost daily, filled not with forgiveness, but with rage and hatred, detailing what the writers hope will happen to him. Each piece of correspondence reinforces the stigma, the infamy, the universal revulsion tied to his name. Inside the walls of Blackwater, he cannot escape this psychological reality. And yet, the external threats continue. In the hierarchy of the prison, child killers occupy the lowest rung. Even among violent offenders, there are lines that are considered sacrosanct. To violate a child is to violate the core code of survival among inmates. Ronnie Oneal's daily existence is therefore a delicate negotiation of survival. Every interaction with another prisoner carries the possibility of attack. Every step down a hallway might be met with sudden, brutal violence. Yet, paradoxically, the measures taken to protect him, limited contact, solitary activities, constant monitoring, add another layer of torment. The mind, deprived of meaningful human interaction, begins to deteriorate. Loneliness becomes a cage within the cage. Fear is compounded by boredom, by monotony, by the certainty of endless repetition. Medical and psychiatric research over decades has shown that humans are not built for prolonged isolation. The sensory deprivation, the constant surveillance, the absence of normal human communication all contribute to measurable neurological decline. Prisoners in such conditions report time distortion, paranoia, vivid hallucinations, and profound depression. Some lose their grasp on reality entirely, speaking aloud to no one, pacing in circles, engaging in acts of self-harm. Some develop behaviors that appear irrational or grotesque, all desperate attempts to assert existence in an environment designed to erase individuality. For Oneal, these effects are not abstract. They are real, daily, inevitable, and irreversible. As the years pass, the physical environment reinforces the psychological toll. Concrete, steel, fluorescent lights, narrow walkways, identical routines repeated endlessly. Each element is a constant reminder that freedom is impossible. Meals, recreation, showers, and movement are all regimented with military precision, leaving no space for spontaneity, no relief from monotony, no escape from the self. And the knowledge of the public's scrutiny intensifies the punishment. His case is notorious. Television specials, social media commentary, news coverage, they ensure that his reputation as a child killer never fades. New people learn of his crimes daily, making him a perpetual target for hatred, not just from fellow inmates but from the world outside the walls. The psychological state this creates is one of chronic trauma. Stress hormones flood the body constantly. Sleep is fractured and fitful. Eating becomes a task fraught with suspicion. Every interaction carries potential danger. Yet, paradoxically, the same measures designed to protect him, solitary confinement, restricted contact, constant surveillance, also strip away any human connection, ensuring that relief is impossible. Death, in comparison, begins to appear as a mercy the law has refused to grant. And this is only part of the punishment. While the physical and psychological toll of confinement is severe, the moral and emotional weight is heavier still. He lives with the consequences of the night his daughter died and his son survived. Each memory, each recollection of screams, each awareness of the life-altering trauma inflicted on his child is inescapable. The human mind is forced to relive what cannot be undone. Every sunrise marks another day of the same psychological torment, another repetition of a nightmarish routine that will likely continue for decades. As we consider the enormity of Oneal's sentence, the question becomes unavoidable. Is life imprisonment in these conditions truly a lesser punishment than death? In the courtroom, Judge Sisko called this the worst case she had seen in nearly 20 years on the bench. And behind the walls, reality confirms it. The combination of isolation, fear, physical confinement, and perpetual psychological torment creates a form of punishment that is arguably far more severe than the finality of execution. Ronnie Oneal III is alive, yet in many ways, existence itself has been weaponized against him. Decades of endless, controlled repetition, decades of fear, decades of being marked as one of the most reviled criminals in the country. This is his sentence, measured not in months, but in the slow erosion of mind, body, and spirit. Perhaps this punishment reflects that reality. Perhaps some acts are so unspeakably cruel that death feels almost merciful, too brief, too simple, too clean. Perhaps true justice sometimes demands the slow unraveling of a mind rather than the immediate finality of an execution. Ronnie Oneal will die in that prison. That is not conjecture. That is inevitable. Yet unlike those on death row, He does not know when that moment will come or how it will arrive. Every day until then is a mirror of the one before it, an unbroken cycle of monotony, fear, and isolation. That total absence of hope, that eradication of future possibilities, that endless repetition of anguish. Some would argue it is far worse than any death chamber could impose. So what do you think? Is life without parole the ultimate justice? Or would execution be a fairer sentence? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this investigation chilled you as deeply as it did us, make sure to subscribe for more true crime stories that peel back the headlines to expose the stark and unforgiving truths of justice in America.